All right, our last speaker for today, who's been waiting so patiently for her slot, is Melisa Kurtcan. Got connected to her from Mayra, our friend in Bali, and she's going to be lovely to meet you. It's so beautiful. We're, finally, like physically in front of each other. You are the founder of S21, right? A blockchain ecosystem. And you're going to be sharing with us a little bit about community-owned businesses. We're excited to hear. The mic is yours.
Thank you so much. I met Unit's co-founders probably a year and a half ago. So this is more or less completing the whole journey of our friendship. I hosted Michael's speech on token economy a year and a half ago, which we were a couple of hundred people at that time, and the community, S21, blockchain and crypto community based in Bali, with the co-founders and developers of different projects, since then has been growing, and that's how I'm here to present you cohesive value generation systems. So the talk was about the community-owned businesses, decentralized autonomous organizations, and the generally community-led and managed and owned businesses. But I'm going to actually talk about a little bit more the value-generating systems instead of businesses, because I think we are at the precipice of this solution of business-market distinctions. And eventually, we need to find a different and more comprehensive word for business. When we say business, it is actually like now being outdated. And that's the beauty of it. So how am I changing the... But, okay. Play with it. Okay. So my name means honeybee in Greek language, and there was a mythology once that's kind of, I took it as my vocation to build communities, cross-pollinate the different networks, and put people together for different purposes. And that's why you're going to see a lot of bees around there. That's the mythology about Eurydice and Orpheus, which brought me to the to this idea of like building community-based business and value-generating systems generally. So at the beginning of it, I realized the whole myth was also like, you can check it out, I'm not going to get into details, but the myth is about the distinction between the profit and value. So everything that is profit driven on one side, and everything that is more just for fun, just for pleasure, but doesn't really bring anything much to the like more cultural arts and everything useful and technological and business-wise, everything that actually brings value on one side. And then I realized there's actually this hierarchy of values, and that was when I was taking ecological feminism class in masters, which was really strange because I've been raised in a Western university with Western sciences and studied philosophy, cognitive sciences, mathematics. So I'm also used to thinking about this binary oppositions to understand things. And we have a lot of binary oppositions, which are generally attributed one being more important than other. But these are arbitrary attributes, actually. So it's not really like essential. For instance, profit compared to non-profit, business compared to art, nature, technology, science on the one side, religion and mythology, male, female, human, animal. These are all these pairs we think as different discrete oppositionary concepts, and we tend to think that these concepts actually exhaust the reality, whereas actually it doesn't reflect the nature itself. Nature works with in more spectral terms, like it presents a spectrum of different values, and these are not really like one or the other. They're not really binary, and so they're not essential. And so I was thinking more fluid concepts to understand the values, how we actually create values as systems. And eventually culture, community, synergy, these were the neglected aspects of value generating systems. So I'm going to talk about the philosophy and morality beyond the value-generating systems, and generally related to the sustainable development goals, how blockchain is actually crucial, and how can it help us to see it as a bigger value-generating, an important value-generating mechanism. For that, I'm going to refer to system theory. This is the concept I mean, not the system theory itself, but in relation to the DAOs and community-owned businesses, it's something I'm just putting it together. So, system theory defines system as parts that are related in time and space. So they have temporal and spatial proximity. Influenced by its structure and purpose. So there's actually a sort of purpose that brings all parts together, and it's expressed through its functioning. And when there is a synergy, and synergy is not like a spiritual term, it is more like it can be a chemical synergy. The system exhibits system-level emergent property or a behavior, and this emergent property is bigger than the totality of its parts. It can be only observed on the population level, and it doesn't follow the in a linear way the individual activities of each parts of the system. And we can give an example of the ant colonies, for instance. They have, and also bees, they're working in a way that the whole system actually communicates with its interrelated connections with each other, and eventually they build the structures that are much bigger than their individual efforts. Also, human consciousness is one of that's like different parts and the different connectivity levels interacting with the singular cells constantly in communication produces something that's so unique and it makes our lives meaningful. Also, World Wide Web. So, what's the difference between an organized system and just disorganized mass, like a just bunch of stuff together? It's interconnectivity. Interconnectivity is basically the principle that organizes the relationship between the parts in relationship to a bigger whole. That is sometimes a function, a purpose, or an ideal, and it's mediated, like this relationship between you and me, for instance, is mediated by that purpose of the total, of that collective. And generally, this is a built-in formula, and we take it as, we carry it as a heritage with the evolution of genetics or through collective learning, so it's also a part of the collective. This is a dynamic process, it evolves in time, and eventually these systems develop some sort of a self-regulating, autonomous, self-correcting properties. And again, it cannot be tracked, like this whole function, the purpose, it cannot be tracked down to the activities of individual parts. So each component of the system contributes in their unique way by relating to each other something to the totality of the whole activity. And that's make any system unique in a sense that it's not just the totality of a bunch of stuff. So how to effectively implement? So this is just to show that when systems, when agents, any kind of agents, are organized in a way that it's organized and referring to a higher purpose and everything, there is a value that is bigger than the totality of itself, of the parts itself. So how do I operate with businesses, green businesses, tech businesses, NGOs, or any community level activities? It's basically defining a goal and an end result, and by these purposes, by these value mechanism, reverse engineering it slowly into a function. What does that community is going to do basically? What's the function? What's the purpose? What's how eventually these people coming together generates a value? What value it's going to generate? Not even calling it a business model yet. And then individual roles, like what roles I want eventually this higher function to be played out individually by different agents. And different ingredients, how many different roles and how many much different collections of the individual parts I want there to be. And the structure, how these different structures are going to be shaped, and how are they going to, these different components are going to relate to each other, and how these different parts are going to relate to the whole, to the function, the purpose. So coming to business side, improved business practices, stronger communities. This is the, once I started thinking about it as collective value generation, then the business by itself, it's not only a practice that generates income, but it's sort of with the help of community and the collective, it generates values, it generates principles that actually binds these different categories to each other, which eventually creates some sort of a higher value for the community itself, and that's usually unexpected. Thinking about sustainable development goals, these are generally a system level, population level effects we want to observe in the world generally. So thinking about no poverty, it's like impossible to tackle by just one organization or with individual effort. Thinking about sustainable cities and communities, it's you really need to render each and every individual to first of all make them care about that end goal, make them participate, and not just because they're being paid for that purpose, basically. That's why I with this system theoretic approach, I see a big value of blockchain and decentralized organizations generally, community-based and owned business models, a kind of affinity between the global sustainable goals and the blockchain. Basically, I think it's a much important infrastructure that we should be choosing. And what is first of all, global sustainability goal? It should be relevant for everybody, for everyone in the community, right? And it's naturally distributed rights, like clean air and fair compensation and stronger communities and everything. But we are not yet incentivized enough to take action. We are not a part of a system that contributes to that end goal altogether yet. So collective action is required. And obviously, labor, any participation needs compensation. And this reward, as well as the value generation on the system level, needs to be distributed collectively. So, decentralized autonomous organizations basically allows us to rethink the coordination and incentives of different goals. It's basically aims to make it a bit easier to collectively raise capital, gathering our resources together, and makes everyone in the community to effectively participate in decision making, and execution and management to be pursued in a but different, not top-down way, but by everybody's participation. And also it needs a compensation model. People needs to be paid for their action. And eventually these four are more or less covered, but there's one that's really important for any system to actually learn from its own actions, collective memory creation, data acquisition, and kind of feedback loops so that it is actually a self-regulatory system. What do I mean by that? For instance, eventually a collective DAO makes a choice, and if it's a financial choice, eventually you can assess the results. There's a price going up and down, and there's a profit. But there are many other actions and many different DAOs that makes different choices. So there's not really a creation of a collective memory that can show, like, okay, that action contribute to the value, not only the price of this collective system. So building that is also going to empower the DAOs, and I think that that has a huge potential. And I believe communities is the fail-safe of these systems, because we are not only talking something like, I don't know, a network that copies a neural network. We are constantly interacting with it as the actual human beings, and we are in that input and output loops. So communities, we have different methods of communication with each other. So we have another level of correcting ourselves, self-regulating, and adding to the value generation model. So, okay, what sort of points, like what sort of components we would like to have in any DAO? So when we're talking about any decision making, any democratic action, basically, we need to think and consider rendering every individual a rational autonomous agent, so that they can actually decide by their own reason and have equal access to information. So education being part of DAOs, it's like crucial. An independent actor beyond the mob mentality, going with the crowd. So like some DAOs like generally incentivize the participation to voting only if the actual vote is on the side of the majority, for instance. Like that's already kind of an ill-designed system, in my opinion. So on the relational level, there should be some sort of another cultural binding so that people are motivated, because one of the biggest problems of DAOs is the lack of participation. We are not trained to actually constantly participate to decision-making process. We would like to delegate that. We don't want to have that way of like thinking, arguing, reasoning about the things most of the time. We are not designed, we haven't got that education in our lives so far. So that's also a crucial part. We would like to care to actually participate in these decision-making processes. And I'm passing that one. So on the system and community level, what kind of values we can create? Holistic value, for instance, a DAO coming together to buy an NFT just because the DAO itself cares about the that digital assets cultural worth, is beyond and above the individual abilities of each person. That's one thing. And with open source, different technologies, different people contributing to actual systems development, it's actually beyond the actual value that's created, it's beyond and above individual actions. It's a collective and totality, the population level value. And collective information sharing, value generation, that is again related to the previous point of. So what kind of different structures we have? If everybody's on the same level with each other, like for instance, if it's a venture, if it's a investment DAO, we just put money and everything. We don't really need to have like maybe different collection of different delegatory groups. Everybody's on the same level. Or we can have like more social media, content creation, or NFT kind of projects that has both collectors, investors, creators, artists, and different sort of groups. Or we have a multi-layered or diversified groups, and there we need to think about more in much more details how to actually organize these different groups and the relationships between each parties to each other in relationship with the totality of the system. And I think in the future that's going to go to the diversified way. That's why I think we need to be more in contact thinking about these aspects of the decentralized autonomous organizations. Skipping that way. So eventually, cohesive systems generates value that is bigger than the sum of its parts, and that's why we should care about community-owned and managed projects. Global sustainability goals are system-level properties needing collective and systemic effort. And blockchain provides a very good infrastructure to actually get there. And I consider blockchain kind of relational synergy and infrastructure, like the chemistry between different particles that produces that effect eventually. Communities operate as a fail-safe when individuals are empowered with improved business practices, and altogether impact-driven projects and blockchain, when combined well, can lead to a global change, and I think that's our biggest chance. So we can have the Q&A, so I was just kind of like rapidly passing. If you want to know more about the actual, like how I actually apply these different value generation systems and the philosophy beyond to my own projects and the projects that I'm related, there are a couple of examples. I take it as a question. So we have a new platform that's women-owned, led, founded in Asia. So this is basically an artist, NFT artist, and charity empowering project. So we are minting and we are accepting also NFT donations to help the local artists and also to donate the artists and the buyers' preferred donation charity. Bali Food Bank is one of that. Bali Food Bank generally is the section of food bank where these different food banks provide food for different families, the local families in Kenya, India, and Indonesia. They accept crypto, which was a super hard thing because it's not really complementary. Like the charities and NGOs generally need to show the actual person who contributes, who makes the donation. So there's still kind of a lot of the barriers to actually donate to these super cool projects. Ecolabel 8, my first ever client in Indonesia, Bali, is a plastic recycling waste management company. Taking, for instance, Body Shop's own plastic bottles, turning them into a total different items such as pocket mirrors or hair combs, and we are now tokenizing it with an aspect of beach cleanups and the community's participation to beach cleanups, and different businesses also participating to this ecosystem. LOV is a media, lifestyle, luxury, entertainment that has a eventually sustainability and charity donation aspect. And that's it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Melisa? I don't actually need a mic. I don't know why I was running around when I told you. Carson.
You talked about at some point about the end stage of a DAO. I think everybody knows DAOs, that DAOs sometimes always start in one spot and then kind of end up in another. What would you see as a good way of taking a DAO from maybe a small group that starts a DAO to a more organized state? What will be a good, I don't know, process, or what are these stages that you see DAOs go through that make sense for you?
Thank you. That's a really good question. So there are two, like when I say end result or function, goal, I mean two things. So one is a built-in on-chain function of the DAO, and if it's an investment DAO, for instance, most of this is automatic and pre-programmed, right? So we vote, and if it passes the actual level, the transaction is generated by itself, so nobody needs to do anything else. So that's one thing, like, I mean, just without, for instance, that's going to be the first ever case that we're thinking about that. The end result, the end goal, the purpose, I would say, a collective investment, which is the model of union trades and the collective investment platforms. And so then, okay, we want to gather our capital to collectively invest into stuff. That's an end goal, that's a purpose. And then there's an implementation level of it, how to effectively do that by creating different people participating to that, basically. So if we want to effectively participate and buy stuff, then the first thing actually would be, okay, we have 4 people coming up with that idea. What can we buy? Like, can we buy a house? Then if the answer is no, then we need to make more effort to actually pass that idea and make other people excited about the same sort of behavior and results. So that's why these different, like the synergies, the cultural sides that's usually neglected in many economic theories, basically, is the gap and the thing that we should be more considerate about. That's the whole point. So slowly building, it actually needs different people believe, like first couple of people they're believing in an idea and defining it well, and then defining how to get there with how many people. But that depends also passing that, like conveying that passion to one each other. I think that's also should be at the forefront of community building and DAO building. So that's how I would stage it, if that answers your question.
To the point that you said that it is hard to help the food bank because they need, they cannot take crypto because they need to prove or like have some statements showing where the money came from and where it's going to. What do you think about peer-to-peer? Like, and I think maybe crypto can be the answer for that. Someone needs help, someone wants to help and those two get connected. Like there's DAOs like that. Do you see some trend like that in the ecosystem?
That's a great question and a great recommendation. The problem is these people, the smartphone penetration is super low to these areas generally. So that's and that's another aspect of the like creating any sustainable solution or tokenizing any sustainable business. Like however creative, however brilliant your idea is, eventually you need to go back to the basics and consider it in a more holistic way. You cannot suddenly actualize and expect it to be profitable and create a sustainable or any effect without considering it as a holistic in a holistic way, because then you need to make sure these people, like how to actually safely onboard these people to crypto space, like how to one by one get them have their own wallet, how to get them not lose their seed phases or share it. Also, for instance, there are a couple of projects when they try to do it with a utility token where investors can trade the token and some of it is donated to the families, and only thing I mean normally the actual idea is okay, we give money to, and that's a pitch, that's a part of the pitch, which is amazing, okay, but what about like people dumps? What about the price fluctuates, because most of these people are just going to so you need to actually predict how these people operate, and it's like what do they actually need. So starting from the actual needs, like internet, okay, huge problem. Most of these areas, they don't have a stable internet. The private computer and mobile phone, it's also another thing. So when we are thinking about, okay, like give, which is super empowering, because then they don't need to share fees, like they don't, and that's actually how we can tackle this question of unbanked population, right? Because otherwise, we have the best solution for something we cannot even cover, which is super. But food bank is actually accepting crypto, and with different places, connecting the different dots is super hard. Also needs centralized solutions in terms of logistics. But yeah, I mean, we're still trying to find some creative solutions for that.
Yeah, to connect those who want to help and those who need help.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.